Okay, great. I actually learned this when I was an intern, and I never got out of the hospital for 36 hours. It just was driving me crazy. And you couldn't go out of the hospital ever. You just... So finally one day, about a year and a half into it, I went up to the resident, I said, you know, I've got to go out and have a smoke. He looked at me, he said, you still smoke? And I said, yeah, I still smoke. I don't smoke. So he said, well, okay. So I went outside, out of the hospital for 2-3 minutes in the sun, watched the fog come in San Francisco, and then I went back in. So taking mini vacations is very, very important. When I start to get really stressed at work and I can feel it, I try and get out of whatever situation it is. As a doc sometimes, and you guys can do it with your phones, I'd set my beeper off sometimes just to get out of the situation because I could feel it. I go, oh, sorry. And I'd go out and try and get out and take 2 or 3 minutes, go to my happy place, as one of my doctor friends came, and to come back. Now, what else do I do? Well, sometimes I'm just under stress. What can I do? I try and get out of the situation. I go for a run. I go for a swim. I go do some yoga. I do some deep breathing. But my favorite thing to do if I can is go for a long walk. Because walking is not, I don't think of as exercise. There's something that walking is the most natural thing for the body to do. And when you walk and you get outside and you walk, something happens. I learned this when I took the pilgrimage to Santiago de Compostela. I did it over 4 years, and we would walk 300 miles every 3 weeks, 15 miles a day, 1.5 miles an hour. And I realized that it recalled to me the place that I think he was talking about. There's a place that maybe it was Nancy. There's a place that we've forgotten, that we used to know. It's a playful place. It's an unconstrained place. And we've forgotten it as we accepted all the stuff that came on us over the years in school and married and our children. And to get back to that place and remember it, it's the most unstressful place I know. Okay?
Excellent. You know, I'm so not an expert in this stuff, but that was interesting because I suddenly realized that I do some of that 80% stuff a lot. And one thing I do is I play golf with these guys, and we're so not good golfers. And we realized to shoot par, you know, you got to be a really good golfer, and we're not. So we decided most of us are not going to get a par 4 on a par 4, so we moved everything up one. If you shoot a 5, you get a par. Right? If you're on a par 3, 4, perfect. Shooting par golf. Now, it only works with these 3 guys I golf with, but it's kind of cool. Anyway, Luke, some solutions.
Okay, I got legs. I'm going to use them. First of all, I want to get a feel. Who's in the audience? Who here is a physician? Raise your hand. Let's give them a hand. Nurses, raise your hand. Nurses, let's give them a hand. How about priests, nuns, or former priests, former nuns? Raise your hand. Stand up. Let's give them a hand. Okay, this is a pretty liberal conversation we're having here. So, did anybody go to Woodstock? Now we have to ask this question. Was anybody conceived at Woodstock? Okay, so I live just north of Boulder, which you probably know is a pretty liberal town. And as it turns out that every third person there is an acupuncturist. Every third person is a massage therapist. Half the people are Buddhist. It's a very healthy town. One of my friends is a therapist, and she said, the problem I see today is that people have lost the ability to be still. We've lost the art of stillness. There's a wonderful passage in Proverbs that says, be still and know that I am God. There's a passage in the Tao Te Ching. I don't have it memorized, but it's almost the same thing. It says, when you are one with the Tao, you have reached the place of stillness. The Bhagavad Gita, all the great sources of Scripture remind us how important stillness is. And so when I teach my students, but also I got to tell you, I speak in corporate America, all kinds of places, because stress knows no demographic boundaries. It is the equal opportunity destroyer. And I give homework assignments. So I'm going to give you some homework assignments. Now the good news is I don't collect them. But I've got friends in town here, so the word gets out. But the first homework assignment I want to give you is create a healthy boundary in your life where you do not feel as if you're being walked over. Because when people begin to do what I call the BMW syndrome, stands for bitch, moan, and whine, what you are really hearing is grieving. And what you're really hearing when it goes too long, now it's okay to do catharsis, but you don't sit on the toilet all day. So when you have a healthy boundary, then move on. Have a healthy boundary with this too. And so in terms of healthy boundaries, pick one area in your life that you can feel you can pull the reins on. Because if you always do BMW, you basically have a sign on your forehead that says, I'm a victim. You know, I love the movie The Color Purple, and I think it was Oprah Winfrey's character who said to Whoopi Goldberg, girl, you're just a welcome mat and people walking all over you. And when I hear people doing BMW, I see a lot of welcome mats. So at times, pull up the mat, create a healthy boundary, and establish your personal time for stillness. Unplug from the world. It's okay to do that. We all, I think everyone in this room, lived before Wi-Fi. We all survived. You can do it again. One other thing I'm going to give you for a homework assignment is the importance of humor. I gave my students this when I taught a class called Humor and Health, and it's worked out so well, I'm going to give it to everybody. I want you to create a tickler notebook. I want you to gather funny jokes, JPEGs, video clips, birthday cards, Christmas cards, whatever, Dave Barry columns. Put them in a notebook because the research shows children actually laugh about 500 times a day if they're having a good day. Adults, we're so sophisticated, we have it down to 15 if we're lucky. Hospital patients, the big zero. I live by the motto that says, to know and not to do is not to know. I'll say it again. To know and not to do is not to know. So I said to my students the first time I taught this humor class, God forbid you end up in the hospital. We know what the research suggests. No laughter. Wellness means to take responsibility for your own health. So you grab your toothbrush, you grab your PJs, and you grab that tickler notebook. I had a woman who, down in Colorado Springs, heard me give a talk similar to this. It was an after-dinner speaker on humor, and she wheeled up to me afterwards in a wheelchair. She was in this bright yellow wheelchair. And I gave a talk on humor, and she said, your talk wasn't funny, and she wheeled away. And I thought, well, I guess we didn't reach her. A year later, she came to a presentation I gave, and she wheeled up in a yellow wheelchair, and she had this basket in front, and she said, would you please give me a moment? I want you to grade my homework assignment. And I played dumb, and I said, which one was that? I knew damn well which one it was. And she said, I spent time doing my tickler notebook. Would you please take a look? And it was like a Yellow Pages in L.A. It was thick. It was gilded leaves. It was incredible. And she said, when I first met you, I thought you were a jerk because nothing funny about having fibromyalgia. And then when I drove home, I realized it wasn't you. It was me. I was a curmudgeon. And she said, I'm not going to tell you that humor has actually healed me of my fibromyalgia, but I will tell you this. I am no longer a curmudgeon. And I said, you get an A. She goes, no, take a look. I spent time on this. So I want you to make a tickler notebook. And my last thing I want to say is this. 30-some years ago, I had the privilege to hear Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, the woman who basically was the catalyst for the hospice movement. She wasn't there to speak about death and dying at this conference. She was there to speak about holistic wellness. The integration, the balance, the harmony of mind, body, spirit, and emotions. And when she got done, I got in line like everyone else to meet her because this woman had enough energy to light up New York City. And I thought, I want to touch the robe that has inspired me for my career. And when it came my turn, she said, what's your name? And I said, my friends call me Luke. And she said, Luke, what's your passion in life? She didn't say, what do you do for a living? She goes, what's your passion in life? And I said, everything you've been saying. The integration, balance, and harmony of mind, body, spirit, and emotions. And she said, I need your help. I said, sure, how? And she said, would you help me and people like me reintroduce the ideas of human spirituality back into healthcare, back into health education? And when I said yes, I felt like I was knighted by the Queen. I'm going to ask you the same thing she asked me, because by only looking at physical health, we are doing a half-assed job with health promotion, wellness, and the whole healthcare. And so this is a very liberal topic. I figure you guys go along with this, so I'm going to ask you what she asked me. Please take time to introduce the ideas of human spirituality in healthcare, health education, whatever you can, because without it, we are in trouble. Thank you.
Wayne, some solutions.
Well, I think actually that's solution number one is exhaling is actually not a lot of people don't ever quite get around to that. So, actually you can try it, with me. Just, I mean, like for real, just like, There's actually a portion of one of the creation stories where it says, on the seventh day God rested and was refreshed, and that word refreshed in Hebrew can also literally mean, and God exhaled. And when do we really get a chance to exhale? When we've done what we can do, we've planted what we can plant, we've healed what we can heal, we've done enough for today. I wrote a book several years ago on the Sabbath. It was quite popular. I've gotten lots of requests to speak. I still do. People say, oh, God, I love the book. I love all the things to talk about. It's been so important in my life. Really, what's changed? Well, nothing, really. But but it's such a great book. I just... So I started to think, well, what's getting in our way? There are these study after study, not to mention the fact that it's like a commandment, and it's not like a lifestyle suggestion, do not kill, do not take a nap. It's right in the manual, So, so then why isn't it happening? And part of it is that we don't hear any permission anymore that that's enough for today, and we can now rest and let it go and put our head on the pillow and say, well, that was a good day. That was enough. More often, we have a little piece of paper next to our bed so that when we, at 2 o'clock in the morning, remember something that we didn't do on our to-do list, we write down something, and in the morning, I read it, and it's some hieroglyphic that means nothing. But the only thing I know is that I'm not out of bed yet, but I'm already behind. And that may cause some stress. If we can wake up behind in America, that's... So one of the things that, is important to do is to find where that point, and to a certain degree, the 80%, the changing par, is learning to feel what is enough in any given relationship, action, commitment that we have in our lives. Where is that point of sufficiency where it really is enough so that we can leave it for now, because we will not fix it and get it all done no matter how much more we do. And that moment of where is that permission going to come from? It doesn't come from inside. Our mind says we should do more. The technologies say we should do more. The organizations, the culture says we should do more. And then there are these old stories of Jesus who's having dinner with some of his friends and disciples, and this woman comes in, presumably Mary Magdalene, to give him like an aromatherapy treatment. And the disciples freak out, which is pretty much what they do throughout the entire Bible, which is a whole other story, which I won't get into. But anyway, so they freak out and they said, "Oh my God, look at that, Neiman Marcus, for God's sake, but at least we could, get the receipt, we could take it back and get the money for the poor, And Jesus says, I don't know how long I'm going to be alive. This woman wants to give me this beautiful thing. If I didn't receive it, it would be a sin. And the truth is, the poor we will always have with us." And when I was a kid and I first heard that story, that sounded cold, poor, I always have with us, it's like he's going to the spa business. But, what he's saying is that, this work is not our work to fix. All the children who need to be held, all the sick who need to be healed, all those whose hearts are broken, our ancestors' ancestors were holding these same people. Our children's grandchildren will be doing this. We will not finish this. We will not fix this. we can only bring a little portion, some offering, some gift, some blessing. And that will have to be enough, because even if we add another hour to the day, another day to the week, we still won't end hunger, end disease, end injustice. It's part of the deal. And so what is our job? So one of the questions that might relieve some of that stress is to pan the camera back. And really, what is our job? Is it to heal everyone that we see, or is it to do what we can and have mercy on ourselves and others, knowing that tomorrow we won't run out of people to help? Another thing is to know that all we can ever do is the next right thing. We can never do more than that. Our whole life, that's all we ever do, is the next right thing. So if you can pan the camera in and say, okay, what's the next right thing? Well, how do I know? Well, try asking yourself this question: do I love this, or can I handle this? You'll know. You'll get an instantaneous answer. And our whole life is made up of those little choice points that we make over and over and over and over again. What's the next right thing that I can do? Another really, the Sabbath story, that smoking having been a sabbatical, there's a moment where every parent, every teacher, every clergy, every physician, every caregiver, if I'm with someone and they're in pain or lost or frightened and they need my company, and I say, well, tell me your story, I'll be here, I'll listen, I'm telling the truth. And maybe 2 days later, someone else comes with a very similar story, and I say the same thing, and I'm lying. Because I don't really have the care or the space in my body in that moment. And what I'm offering is dishonest kindness. Because there's a moment after which I am brittle and thin, and I have no genuine love in me to offer. And so what I'm offering is something I don't have. So part of it, the stress reduction, is telling ourselves the truth when we hit that moment, and you all know when it is. What do we do in that moment? And it's something we need to share with our friends, our colleagues. It's not something we can do by ourselves, but everybody in here knows that moment. What do we do when that moment happens, when we now are in need of care, are in need of that Sabbath smoking break? How do we tell the truth to one another and say, okay, I've got this. You need some time, you take it. I've got your back. And we do this for one another. Last quick story, because
Don't rush.
because it's quite hopeful, actually. It's a group of young people, late 20s, early 30s, who were really wired in on lots of levels, very successful. Somehow got in touch with me partly through this Sabbath work, and one was like the CFO at Pixar, another was like Wired Magazine's top 5 something or other. And these people are like going and they're moving and they're connected, but they're missing something, again, that people talked about, that they never even had. They didn't have a memory of stores being closed on Sundays, or a memory of a world without connectivity and electronics. And this isn't their parents yelling at them to get off the screen anymore. This is them saying, there's something about being human and still that we're missing, and we don't even know what to call it, or what, or how to, or what that is. And so they called me, and I said, well, I'll show up in Cambridge on my dime. You send out, invitations. You comes on their dime. They sent out an invitation. In 5 days, 25 people had already signed up. We had to cut it off. People flew in from New York, California, London, Berlin, all over the people who were thirsty for a circle where they could talk about what's it like to be alive and not productive. What's it actually like? It's almost like a mythological unicorn experience. And for them to have that weekend was so life-changing for them that they've begun doing writing, inviting other people, calling people. They're calling people right now. In order to invite them to imagine that there are other ways of being alive and knowing things and helping heal and connect the world that can happen. There's a Tao Te Ching says, no one can make muddy water clear, but if left to stand, it will gradually become clear of itself. And they got that there's another way that things can happen in the world that involve something larger and deeper than themselves that they were missing in their body, even though they'd never had it before. That to me is such a hopeful sign that they felt it, that they wanted to know about it, and that they're continuing to want to spread that. There's something online called the Sabbath Manifesto, which is a whole other story. But there's a movement. So I'm here to tell you that there's hope. But again, those permissions of knowing when we have nothing left to give, knowing when it's enough, knowing when it's sufficient, knowing that it's not our job to heal everyone who comes, knowing that we're hardwired to have a rhythm between having our hand on the plow and resting under the shade of what we planted a very long time ago.
Okay, it's your turn. Don't stress. We're going to be done by 1:30. But for about 10 minutes, we're going to take some questions. I think we have a microphone out there. Peter's got the microphone, so just raise your hand if you have a question for any of our esteemed panelists today. And yeah, in the back. Go ahead. Can you just...
There we go.
Marijuana self-medicating. Your thoughts?
Victoria, why don't you go first?
I will. I'll just stand in place for this. I'm going to be myself because the first I was a little bit disappointed when Nancy called me about this. I talked to my mother, and my mom says, "Oh, Colorado's the place with marijuana. What are they talking about stress for?" So the first thing I did when I got, and I've never been to Colorado before, so I was all excited to come to a place where there was recreation. It's gorgeous. So the first thing I did was get out of the airport yesterday. I was walking to the airport. I was, where's the marijuana ready? Where's the Necco bars and the handy? So this morning, I had an hour off, and I went to the marijuana place to see what it was like. It was fascinating, and I encourage everybody to go and check it out. It was really interesting, and I think the thing that was most interesting was it's in this downtown area, and they were the most mellow homeless people on the streets I have ever seen. I mean, they didn't beg, they didn't bother, just like, hi, lady, you know. So marijuana is interesting in terms of that. I actually don't like marijuana myself personally very much because of its effect on the memory. I don't like it. I like having a memory that's crisp. It's wonderful for chronic pain. I think it's ridiculous that it was ever illegal, frankly. And, you know, it's like anything else. If you take, you know, a hit or one of those gumdrops or something at the end of the week, and you have a weekend, which is what I'd really like to talk about, is the disappearance of the 40-hour work week that our great-grandfathers felt worked so hard to get for us, and there is no such thing anymore. This is what we really need to do. Take a little bit of marijuana then. The people that smoke it all the time, I don't think it's good for you, but that's their business. I don't know what you want to add to that, really.
In full disclosure, I voted for the first marijuana medical law because I thought, God forbid, if I got cancer, and that's my only last resort, I want to have access to that. In full disclosure, I was raised by two abusive alcoholic parents. I've never drank, I've never done drugs, so I can't speak from experience. I will tell you that I just came from Boise, Idaho, doing a keynote address to over 200 people at a drug and alcohol retreatment center who were going through their sobriety and wanted to celebrate. And so there's pros and cons to all of this. It's a complex issue. I do think that, in a deference to what you said, there are two ways to deal with stress, and avoidance is not the way to do it. I think we all know that. Usually if we avoid something, we're going to see it 5-10 miles down the road with our name on it, saying now's the time. And I think if it's used for avoidance, it's clearly not right. I did see the TED Talk that was in Boulder about the little girl who's got epilepsy who's used marijuana, and that's helped her seizures. I think it's a crime not to have it be a drug. So I know we could spend all time with this, but I think that there are other ways to relax that are not chemically induced. And by the way, I'm not sure you know this or not. You probably do. I think we're all about the same age, give or take a few decades. But the Beatles weren't so hot on the drug trips, and they realized going there was great. Coming back was not so hot. So it was the Beatles that brought TM